Hello, my name is Guy Rushworth and I am team lead for the channel account team for UK and Ireland at Genetec UK. And it's my pleasure to introduce to you today an abridged version of our State of the Physical Security Report 2024. Abridged because this is a global report gleaned from 5,500 respondents, stretching from security installers, consultants and end users. But the focus today is going to be on the UK and especially and particularly UK adoption of the cloud and hybrid technologies. So, as I said, this is a report that's been gleaned from over 5,500 respondents, and that is our largest ever cohort response in the few years that we've been running these reports. There are a lot of research companies out there that Genetec uses and that we recognize as industry standard when it comes to trying to source information data on trends within our industry. But we also wanted to go a little bit deeper and run reports and try and find out a little bit more about some of the buying habits and some of the trends of those particular individual sectors that I mentioned, SIs, customers, and indeed consultants. So, as I said, we've been running this for a couple of years now, and the UK response is the biggest one we've ever received. We had over 200 respondents to the report this year, and it's a 50% increase on last year. So we're very pleased to be able to present to you the findings of our State of the Physical Security Report 2024. So, without further ado, what we found here is that in the 5 years, what percentage of new systems that you deploy will be cloud or hybrid? And again, this question is open to those three categories of individuals: the consultant, the SI, and indeed the installer. And only 5% of our customers believe they will not be moving to the cloud, leaving a further 95% of people in the UK who believe that they will adopt cloud or hybrid in the very near future. So that's really encouraging. And actually, this is a slide that we're going to come back to at the end of the presentation, because throughout this, we find that the narrative really does play into this slide. Which of the following best describes your organization's access control environment? And what we found here was that less than 5% is deployed in the cloud in the UK, while 30% are hybridized. Now, the hybridized element here was fascinating for us, because what we've noticed in the trends through our reports over the last few years was that here in the UK, we're not early adopters of new technology. We like to dip a foot in each pool. And what we found here is a hybridized environment, 1 foot in the cloud, 1 foot still in an on-prem environment, is still very much a thing and highly trending. So hybrid has always been a significant trend for us that we'd noticed throughout the data. Moving on, we asked, where does your organization store the video footage? And 60% of the UK mainly stores in on-premise storage devices like NVRs, server appliances, NAS drives, SANs, and so on and so forth. And certainly from a Genetec point of view, and whilst we've had a cloud and a SaaS offering for over 10 years now, on-premise deployments factor heavily in the projects that we get involved with annually. There is an element of control that our customers like to still have over their systems, as well as a greater involvement by IT departments and their requirements too. So what we have found in one of the major trends that's kind of surrounding all this data that we're finding about cloud is that the prevalence of the IT departments at the decision-making table now, alongside security managers and various other allied adjacent departments, the rise of the IT department is very much present. And indeed, that is bringing to fore a deeper, wider conversation about everything IT. And particularly as we see a greater move towards putting everything in the cloud, I think we're going to see a bigger trend there with that prevalence of the IT department. Did you have a deployment backlog at the start of the year? 50% of the UK said yes, and 50% said no. Sounds very typical of the UK, doesn't it? But a majority of the UK has said that their deployment backlog has increased somewhat. And there are a number of reasons for this that we could glean from the data that we received. There's the post-COVID return to work that still hasn't really happened, particularly if you go into London now. Typically, we're seeing Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays as being the office days, and then Mondays and Fridays are the home office days. And I think that is very much de rigueur for the rest of the UK as well. There were supply chain issues, especially hard hit was the security industry, from cameras, from components, from access control elements. There's geopolitical reasons with the uncertainty that's going on out there, particularly with the illegal invasion of the Ukraine. And that's had an impact across the globe and especially within our industry as well. And there is also that financial uncertainty post-COVID about what buildings and what organizations want to do with their real estate and bringing their employees back into work safely. What were the top challenges faced by your organization in 2023? What we discovered in the data was quite fascinating here, that the UK's primary issue was aging and outdated infrastructure. So these are legacy security systems breeding massive inefficiencies in cost, sustainability, operator and staff training, having to train operators on multiple different and siloed systems, outdated software leading to major cyber vulnerabilities. And what we have here is, as a geopolitical situation, is we have the situation happening in Russia, we have the situation with China and other organizations and governments. And we've seen a rise in our spam box attacks. We've seen a rise in cyber attacks and very much a prevalence of cyber IT related vulnerabilities. So all of these things combined really do weaken an organization's security strategy. And certainly here at Genetec, we don't believe in a siloed approach, integrated approach to security systems. We fundamentally believe that that is afoot in the 90s. What we have and what we talk about on a day-to-day basis here at Genetec is a unified solution, a single pane of glass where all of your connected devices, CCTV, access control, AMPR, linking into BMS systems, IoT platforms, essentially anything that we can get a 1 and a 0 from, we can make into meaningful and actionable data for organizations, driving down inefficiencies in cost, driving down inefficiencies in labor and operations altogether. No surprises here then for us, which legacy systems is most often being replaced. And here we see 20% with access control and 20% with video. That is something that we kind of expected to see because that's our business. It's our bread and butter here at Genetec. Access control and video are very much at the forefront of the conversations that we have and the projects that we deploy with our installed base of channel partners on a daily basis. So cybersecurity tools are a concern too, however, and it's good to see that the education that Genetec and our industry peers and colleagues have done with customers in talking them through what the cyber risks involved of deploying a physical security system are. So typically, we don't now look at a CCTV camera as just a camera. It's more than that. It is a computer. And if you have a system that has 200 or 2,000 cameras attached to it, then what we find is you've got 200 or 2,000 or more computers attached to your network. So you need to be absolutely cyber aware and have a good cyber hygiene regime in order to protect yourself and your businesses from nefarious activities, some of which we discussed earlier on today. And obviously license plate recognition, whilst massive globally, still here in the UK there is a hesitancy among our cohort of customers and our installers to really bring AMPR into the fore. But AMPR is very much on the rise, and it's something that we do support and we do deploy, and we have various offerings here at Genetec to satiate those various appetites. The next slide we come to is this one. What percentages of new security systems installed last year allow cloud connectivity? And what we see here is 55% of the UK say that 50% and less of the new security systems installed last year allow cloud connectivity. Now, this is great news, because what this means is that cloud adoption or cloud awareness is very much on the increase, and this supports all the other evidence and data that we've gathered thus far. Now, whether or not they're deploying their cloud or their systems in a cloud environment day one, that's not so much of a problem. What we're looking at is these are systems that are being deployed that are cloud ready. So they are future proof, which is brilliant news. And it means, certainly here at Genetec, we don't believe in locking organizations and customers into a proprietary route or a hostage as a service solution, as we see out there with some particular manufacturers. At Genetec, we believe in an open and unified security management platform. That means that you have a choice from an open point of view of the cameras and the edge devices that you want to connect to your system. Unified because, as I said before, we can connect all those systems, we can report on all those systems, and we can make actionable a number of different events should we need that to happen. And that brings with it future proofness as well. So if you buy a Genetec system today that is an on-prem solution and you're using a server-based architecture, a few years down the line when you're ready, perhaps you want to then move into a hybridized environment. That's absolutely fine. You will not be penalized for that earlier purchase and investment in that on-prem solution. And similarly, if you want to go straight from an on-prem solution into a cloud solution, Genetec systems are ready and willing to do that for you without any blockers. End user cloud adoption in the UK. So what we see here is 6% have all systems hosted in the cloud. That's 6% versus 7% globally. So actually that hesitancy that I talked about earlier on, perhaps we're not really that hesitant after all, because when we look at the globe and we look at the US, who very much are at the forefront of early adoption of many technologies, and we look at the Asian markets as well, and they are very much ahead of the curve when it comes to early adoption of brand new technologies. We're actually not that far behind the curve, are we, when we look at that 6%, 7% delta. 76% have a hybrid cloud security deployment in the UK versus 60% globally. Now, this is fascinating. This really is fascinating. And again, maybe it does play into that hesitancy that we have here in the UK. But that is a big delta between us and the rest of the globe. So what we're saying is, yeah, we understand the cloud. Some of us are going to do it now, but we might just hang on a little bit. But guess what? Hybridized environment, that's my comfort zone. That's where I feel safe. I've got a little bit of on-prem, so I've still got my control, but also I've got an eye to the future as well with the cloud element of that hybridized environment. And only 18% have no systems hosted in the cloud versus 33% globally. So again, the UK is winning here. This is quite fascinating stuff. 15% of end user respondents in the UK indicated that their organizations already store their video surveillance footage both locally and in the cloud. This compares with just 4% in our previous survey. This is a huge increase over just 1 year. We've gone from 4% to 15%. That is an increase of 275%. And here at Genetec, we see that number as absolutely seismic. We can't wait to see what our State of the Physical Security Report 2025 will hold for us. And we certainly see that cloud is not going anywhere soon. And what with all the hype around cloud at the moment and the activity within our industry, especially, we can see this being a huge upward tick in the coming years. For those of you who would wish to look at a non-abridged version and the actual State of Physical Security Report 2024, please do take note of this QR code and scan and download the report, and please do peruse it at your leisure. Thank you very much indeed for your time. I look forward to hearing from you soon.
thanks, Guy, for another great presentation on the latest trends in the security industry. And it's great to have Genetec back at Security Bio Live. And talking about such an important and topical subject at the moment, cloud technology is definitely becoming increasingly adopted internationally, even by organizations, that don't necessarily even realize they're utilizing it. I mean, I know at the security event, I was talking to one of your colleagues, Nick, and he was saying that, he was visiting a client the other day who was absolutely adamant that they weren't gonna go down the cloud technology route. And when asked, well, how do you currently store a lot of your files and your footage and that from your video surveillance? And he went, well, I upload it into a folder and I put it on SharePoint. And so that just kind of goes to show that not only is adoption already kind of happening, but also the realization and the understanding around it is still coming to fruition. So as people are starting to understand more and better understand that the ease of and efficiency of it is no doubt going to just continuously increasing, like you said, you've seen in the report. And going to your presentation, 5,500 respondents is a pretty phenomenal stat.
Yeah.
So well done to you. And you also said it was one of your largest response that you've seen so far. Do you think there's a particular reason why you think so many people got involved this year? Is it that we're just seeing that adoption in technology and people becoming more interested in what's going on in the industry?
Great question, Rebecca. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here as well. Thank you for your question. I think, there's a number of reasons for that. So we went from something approximating 3,000 respondents in the previous report to 5,500 this year, as you point out. And there could be a number of reasons for that, but I think very much so coming out of or coming into a post-COVID world, as hopefully we are now, post-pandemic, people are seriously thinking about their technology and how they deploy it and what they do with it. And the conversation at Genetec now, very much when we're talking to customers, it starts with CCTV and access control and maybe cloud, but very quickly we start to talk about the art of the possible. Well, what else could we do? Could we make it more actionable for a particular situation? So somebody badges on a reader and the temperature comes on to a certain level that is that's good for them. Or what would happen if it gets too hot in a room? Maybe we've got electric louvers on the window and we can open those out, and it's all done through automation. So technology, I think, is by far and away a huge talking point for people, and I think people want to get involved with that and share their experiences too.
No, definitely. And I think you're nail on the head right there. That we've been seeing this transition in the industry where with technology where it's no longer just kind of designated different niches. Everything is becoming converged. Everything is not, it's no longer just access control, for example. It's building management that is integrated with all these different other parts. And I know we'll kind of get on to integration interoperability in a little bit. You spoke about kind of the response to cloud technology being kind of very much more accepting now, and it kind of reminds me a little bit about the adoption of AI at the moment. We're talking about AI being this new emerging technology, and we're all like, oh my god, how do we innovate within these guardrails? How can we design ethically and responsibly? What is AI? What are the opportunities there? And it reminds me very much of what we were talking about with cloud just a couple of years ago or so, and then suddenly now to see cloud that everyone's like, well, cloud makes perfect sense. And so it no doubt makes me think that in a couple of years we're going to be thinking the same thing about AI. But what do you think is the kind of the primary cause of this kind of rapid adoption since your last report?
Again, a number of reasons, and we can only speculate because the data gives us the trend and the data and of the usage and the uptick. But certainly the conversations that we have with our clients, people want to get involved with it. You mentioned AI earlier on, which incidentally isn't something that Genetec believes in. We very much believe that AI doesn't exist because to have artificial intelligence requires there to be a sentient intelligence there, an intelligence with intent. And AI just doesn't have that. And we certainly don't sell AI at Genetec. What we talk about is IA. Intelligent automation and creating those efficiencies. We'll probably come back onto that a little bit later. But so I think the conversation around cloud has always been a fascinating one because if you're anything like me, you've probably got one of these, a phone, and we store our photos on that. We also do our banking on the phone as well. Very much everything about our personal lives is entrenched in cloud. How we consume entertainment at our television on an evening, whenever you watch telly, through Netflix, through a subscription-based service, it's all there. So why would you not use that in your professional lives as well for your organizations and companies? And one of the things that Simon Cook, our new director of offerings at Genetec, talks about quite fluidly as a subject matter expert on cloud is that when you look at the banking technology that we now use, you're trusting your bank's cloud environment to hold you and your family's financial data, but we're still a little bit hesitant when it comes to the working environment. And I don't think we've quite got the answers to those questions yet, but very much it is a hot topic of a conversation around our table when we talk to our clients.
I mean, definitely, you articulated that so well that you make it sound so obvious. Is in like, I mean, it's true. I mean, I don't even think I use Word documents anymore. I use Google Docs, so I can access it absolutely anywhere where I am.
Yep.
And yeah, you're right. You know, that complete reliance, and we've been using cloud in our personal lives for a long time now, and still slightly, you know, it's been around in the professional environment, but it's been very much the kind of the unwanted third option between, you know, on-prem and hybrid. So it's exciting to see that kind of transition and completely flip the other way now. And in addition, you also spoke about kind of how there's only kind of less than 5% adoption of pure cloud. Obviously, you've got hybrid, but pure cloud in the UK. You know, do you think this is also has something to do with the fact that, you know, we're lacking slightly when it comes to infrastructure and latency, which is obviously one of the kind of the primary concerns and challenges when it comes to cloud technology?
Absolutely, and we don't have to look too far. Some of us may have one on the drive, an EV car, an electric vehicle. And similarly, one of the challenges that we have with that, even though there are arguably conversations to be had about the efficiency and sustainability of these vehicles, the intent is very much there. We need to move away from an environment that we are choking the world. So let's try and move away from it. And similarly with the cloud as well. And I think the challenge we've got with cloud is that the rapidity and the velocity of the amount of data centers that are coming out of the ground now is huge. And in some instances, like Ireland, for example, they've had to put a timeout on any more erection of data centers because of the huge pull that it has on their national grid for electricity. So what that DC world is looking at now is sustainability, self-sufficient environments, data centers that put back into the grid. And I think once we get there and somebody cracks that nut, then I think the latency will certainly come down. I think the costs will also come down as well, certainly for those large at scale deployments. I don't think we're quite there yet. And certainly at Genetec, whilst we have a cloud offering, we've just released our Security Center SaaS offering, which actually has been over 20 years in the making. And we have had a cloud product for over 10 years now. This is really bringing into the fore something I talked about earlier on, that unification piece. And we're bringing in access control, which historically for Genetec was a SaaS-based product, and our video product, which was historically called Stratocast, based in the cloud. And we're bringing those together in a unified way. We've learned a lot ourselves over that last few years, and we've learned about the appetites and the buying trends of our customers. It's an interesting point. It's not going to go wholesale because businesses have to understand how they can monetize this as well, particularly for their sales teams that are selling them. So a £500,000 on-prem solution from a SaaS perspective and a cloud perspective, where you're paying annually, that £500,000 system now becomes maybe a £25,000 a year system. That's brilliant for organizations because that keeps the revenue sticky with them and that customer base, and you can guarantee an annual revenue. But we've still got to figure out how we go from that to that.
Definitely. And I think, you know, the world of, especially in the video surveillance space, is completely changing. You know, our video quality now is a lot higher resolution. The analytics that involve in it are, you know, a lot better. Just the sheer size required for just saving footage is a whole other thing as well, which is coming, which the cloud is definitely going to be more preferable an option when it comes to that side of things. And you also spoke about the top challenges being primarily around legacy systems, and its toll on training and resilience. So how important is it to kind of relay that convergence of physical and cyber solutions to the end user? Is future proofing and scalability something that is challenging in this type of era that we're currently in, this era of technology that we've spoken about?
Great question, Rebecca. So yes, future proofing is important. We strongly believe in that. We at Genetec believe in protecting the flow of everyday life, whether that's personal, whether that's a corporate responsibility. So that conversation is changing, and change is a big word. It's a big thing for all of us to swallow sometimes, whether it's a new job, you're starting school, or you're going to adopt a brand new technology in order to fulfill your security requirements. So very much at Genetec, we see a lot of customers that come into us and they've bought a bunch of different systems and they're trying to stick them together, and it doesn't work because some of these systems are proprietary, so they're locked in many ways. And what we offer at Genetec, as I mentioned before, is that open and unified solution. And with that comes the opportunity for organizations to then move into a future-proof state. They can seem to be challenging moves to go from A to B, but again, that's a mental state. And it's up to us to educate the markets and to educate our customers to help them as well move seamlessly from A to B. And at Genetec, we're not just a manufacturer. Ultimately, we are a software manufacturer, but we have behind us in our various locations around the world, and especially and particularly in Canada, we have a number of teams that are there dedicated to help customers move from A to B. So we don't just sell you something, walk away, and hope that you're going to figure it out yourselves. We're there with you every step of the way.
Definitely. And just quickly to hover on that point about that openness and that unified kind of communication network with other manufacturers to kind of improve the longevity of customers, total solutions, not just one solution, but their overarching whole security strategy. How do you think interoperability is kind of changing that market landscape?
Hugely. I mean, we've spoken of a unified system ad nauseum to a lot of our clients over the years, and we're starting to see a lot of our competitors talking about this as well. And some of them aren't really unified; they're still very much integrated. But I get why they want to do it, and it's great because if we can affect change as well, and we can change that conversation, and we can hopefully make it easier for somebody to move fluidly and more securely to another state with their security system, whether it's with Genetec or another manufacturer, then that's great. It's helping move that conversation along. But certainly, as I mentioned before, here at Genetec, we fundamentally believe in an open and unified security management system. So there's that availability of choice. Well, what cameras would you like to have? What access control readers would you like to have? Would you like to work with other systems as well? And I mentioned in my presentation, basically anything with a 1 or a 0 at Genetec, we can turn into meaningful and actionable data. And that should be available to everybody. We don't want to see a world, and regrettably, we do see a lot of people through our doors who are locked into a proprietary route, and then the cost of change becomes insurmountable. There are products out there, not naming any names, and there is a phrase out there that IPVM has coined, I believe, as hostage as a service. So a situation where you're buying security equipment from a manufacturer, but you also have to buy and subscribe in order to use these systems. And the day that you stop subscribing to them is the day that you lose your security system. Now, that's not right, and we don't believe in that at Genetec at all.
No, definitely. And also, rather than, like you said, you're being locked in, it's not just being locked in with that one access control thing. It means that when new technology comes out, when you need to integrate biometrics or analytics or whatever, you don't have the ability to do that. You've got to upheave your entire solution to
Yeah.
create that fluidity between your entire security network. And just lastly, because I'm a little conscious of time, given the significant changes, since your last report, $1 million question: where do you think the changes that are going to happen kind of throughout this year, what do you think they are that are going to influence the report next year?
Do I get $1 million if I get this right?
If I had $1 million, I would give it to you.
All right. Okay. Okay. So I think I've probably got this answered. So it's a good job you don't have $1 million. We're certainly going to see a continuation of cloud. We're certainly going to see a continuation of a hybridized environment. Again, choice. But I think we're also going to see, and I don't think, I know that we're going to see something that we've noticed, particularly in this report. And I urge people to, your audience, to download a copy and have a look at them for themselves. But there is a huge talent shortage out there as well. Talent from operations point of view, from a sales point of view, and particularly and especially from an engineering point of view. We're fortunate at Genetec, we have a number of partners globally, but speaking as we can about the UK, we see a lot of movement from salespeople, sales individuals, and engineers, and there's a lot of demand on the wages for these individuals. So we definitely see talent shortage being one of them. Cloud, absolutely up there. But I think this year we're going to see that old phrase, AI. I think we're going to see that a lot. We get customers who've watched a program at the weekend and they come in and see us on Monday and say, I want AI. And we go, okay, what do you want the AI to do? And they said, I need it to count people. That's not AI, it's analytics. AI is in analytics, but it's not AI. And again, as I mentioned earlier on, Rebecca, we do, as arrogant as this sounds, at Genetec, we don't believe in AI. We believe in IA, intelligent automation, which is a completely different thing. So I think, in short, I think we're going to see continuation in an uptick in cloud adoption, hybridized environment, talent shortage, and absolutely, we're going to see AI being prevalent in the trends for 2025's report.
Well, definitely, Guy, and I look forward to welcoming you back next year to prove that your predictions are accurate. But from what I can see, I can tell that they seem pretty on track from everything that we're seeing as well. But thank you so much for taking time to talk with me today and to present your session on the latest security trends. So
My
thank you.
pleasure.
If
Thank you
anybody
very
has
much.
any further questions, they can reach out to Guy directly on the platform or through LinkedIn or Genetec directly. Thank you.
Thank you.